Well, hello and good day to the Durango Botanical Society, and in particular, Bill and all the hard work he's put together on putting this together. I'm honored to present to you today Life on a Family Farm and impacts we're facing today from climate change. Bill and I had talked about trying to have tours out on the farm, and unfortunately, that's not possible today, but we hope to be able to do that in the future. But we'll do the second best thing today, which is tell a story and show you some pictures. So with that, I'm going to try to share a screen here, and I'll jump right in. Let's see if I'm savvy enough to do this. Okay. So this is a story about a 21st century multi-generational farm in a time of changing climate. Again, our family moved to Southwest Colorado 4 years ago. We moved from the Central Mountains. We had a small 17-acre farm up in the Roaring Fork Valley in between Carbondale and Vail, kind of up near Cottonwood Pass. And we thought we would take that to a larger scale. We decided to move down here because both our kids live here, went to Fort Lewis, worked for the same firm, or did work for the same firm. And but the decision maker is we have a new granddaughter, and we decided to live with our granddaughter. 200-acre farm is what we purchased. It's called the Deep Creek Ranch. It is on the other side of the La Plata Mountains, about 30 miles as the crow flies to the northwest. We're just simply in the foothills on the other side of the La Plata Mountains. I'll talk a little bit about what it takes to be an economically viable farm or ranch, family farm in today's world. We're a lot of corollaries, similarities to what we're doing. And if you saw the film, The Biggest Little Farm, if not, I would encourage you to watch it. It's fun. We have 3 generations on the farm. Before we moved to the farm, we did a lot of research. We researched by visiting and doing tours on farm. We kept asking people in the Roaring Fork Valley, North Fork Valley, and the Gunnison Valley, you know, who's the successful farmers in your area? And rather than take an academic or read about that, we decided to interview people. And we came away with some knowledge and some themes of what makes them successful. I'll share some of those with you. The first is that people are not following traditional ag practices. There's a trend away from that. Traditional ag practices use the hydrocarbon inputs of fertilizers, herbicides, and pesticides to the point there's no biology left in the soil. There's no nutrients that are being uptaken by plants and food and produce and livestock. And so as a result, a lot of our food is not very nutrient dense anymore. We learned to do a lot more with less. We had learned the importance of soil biology, the inputs of sun, water, plants, and livestock. We learned a lot about rotational intensive mob grazing, which is what we're going to do on our ranch, and we are doing right now. The economics are very challenging. We also learned the importance of value-added products instead of commodities. If you make a value-added product like a cider or a wine or a specialty dairy product or rugs from sheep or alpacas, and you do a very good job of it, there's a market for it. But there isn't a good sustainable market for commodities, things like corn and soybeans and beef cattle, things like that. There's a trend of agritourism because many people from more urban areas have a dream or a vision of living on a small farm and seeing what it takes and learning and having mentorships with young farmers. So some pictures of our farm ranch. We again are at the foothills, the base of the La Plata Mountains. These are 13,000 foot peaks. This is taken from the deck of our small log house. And there's a commonality when you see the next 2 or 3 pictures, and it's that when you look at the La Plata Mountains, you're looking at not only your irrigation water, but you're looking at your drinking water supply for the following year. And so you constantly dwelling, looking at the mountains because you can see exactly where it's coming from. This is again a picture of the La Platas. This is in May. You can see how green it is. And we haven't started to irrigate yet. We have 5 ponds on the property, which were already there, and each one of those is instrumental in being used as a tool for saving water, storing water for future use during the season. Another view, we live in a pinyon juniper ponderosa pine habitat, lots of oak brush. It's known as the Deep Creek Ranch. There's an incredibly deep canyon of 2 creeks with riparian habitat, which is a different world than up here on the mesa where the fields are. Everything's in a conservation easement, so we're very restricted on what we can do with the farm. This is in the fall, 4 weeks ago when we had some snow, and which has since melted. We're still very much in a drought condition. This was in the winter of 2018, no snow in the La Plata Mountains. That gives you pause for the upcoming season. Another picture, we're at 7,100 feet, no snow in, this was late January. We are fortunate to have great sunsets and sunrises, but again, the ever-present snowpack or lack of snowpack in the for our water supply. This was again 4 weeks ago. So a little bit about our farm. The best description is it's an old version of McDonald's farm. We do orchards, berries, vineyards, produce, fiber, sheep, alpacas, and you can see multiple livestock. My daughter does medicinal herbs. We do agritourism, or starting to. But in all of this, we couldn't do all of these things, and we've accomplished all of these things in the 4 years since we've been there. But we couldn't do this and irrigate at the same time. And the former landowner flood irrigated, which took a lot of time and was very inefficient. So our water comes from the La Plata Mountains through a small reservoir called Bower Reservoir and a large project reservoir called Jackson Reservoir. Good senior water rights, but not a lot of abundance of water. It's piped from Bower to our ranch and delivers 120 PSI to the upper end of the property, and that is an astoundingly high amount of pressure. We decided to put that pressure to work. The flood irrigation practice of our farm was very inefficient. It took about, when you applied 100 gallons of water, only about 20 of it was evapotranspired by the growing plants. Very inefficient, very wasteful. We also have native tree nurseries and shrubs, and they're populating the ranch with them. Livestock, of course, chickens. We have both eggs birds and meat birds. The This on the left is for our egg-laying birds. They're all pasture-raised. We have a uh, coop that has an electronic door that opens and lets them out in the morning and opens and brings them in the evening. We have an electric fence because we have lots of predators, from mountain lions to bears to coyotes to foxes to red-tailed hawks and eagles and skunks and raccoons and badgers. And so that's the electric fence, very effective. We also have two great white Pyrenees dogs that protect all of our livestock. On the right is a chicken tractor, very lightweight. We can put about 30 to 40 chickens in the chicken tractor. We move that daily so they graze in a natural manner off of the insect life, the grasses, the forbs, the herbs, and kitchen scraps. We have alpacas. We have a herd of somewhere around 25 alpacas. They're a wonderful, docile, friendly livestock to have. Sheep, we have a type of sheep called a Dorfer sheep. This was one of our first lambs, born in early April. Baby alpacas are called crias, and they're born ready to run from predators, like like many animals that are prey animals. This is another cria. He's just hours old. This is what he looks like when he just first stands. This was taken when he first stood, and you can see he's all legs, but very mature looking. We do livestock, cattle, beef cattle. We are rethinking and changing our plans for cattle. We're looking at a more different breeds of cattle that are more conducive to the intensive rotational grazing concepts. This is the shearing one of our alpacas. We shear them once a year. This is called a shearing table. It sandwiches them in the vertical position in these pads, and then we flip them over. They actually like the process. It takes about 2 days to shear the 25 alpacas. This is what we make out of the felt that is called from the alpacas. The kids make these beautiful rugs. Very nappy, thick, warm. You almost don't want to put them on the ground. You want to put them as a decoration on your wall. This is the ranch crew, folks, 21st century. This is my family. We are the labor on the ranch. We do all the work. I still work as an engineer now. I plan to slow down at the end of this year and work more on the ranch and help the kids out. We do a lot with berries, blueberries, raspberries, blackberries, black and red raspberries, strawberries. And as you know, you need very acidic soil. So we amend the soil with lots of peat moss and pine needles, and we use some fertigation practices to keep the soil very acidic, very low pH. Do lots with the perennial strawberry. We're still learning. This year we had a bumper apricot crop and a very meager crop of apples, pears, peaches, cherries, and plums. But we had a bumper crop of apricots, even though we had lots of very hard frosts in up until late June. We make apricot jam, apricot preserves out of the apricots this year. We are planning to do a lot with hard cider. We've made a couple of batches the last 2 years. This is our 4th year of the apple trees, and next year they should, 100% of them should produce. Try to use some traditional hand apple presses. We're fixing these old presses up. Newer version of a hand apple press. Again, we're experimenting with hard cider. We have about 120 apple trees on the ranch that we planted 3 years ago, most of which are the heritage antique apple trees of Montezuma County. Montezuma County was known as the breadbasket of apples in the early 20th century. And a lot of the younger generation are putting them back to use. They've been neglected and not taken to full term and producing table apples or cider apples. But the younger generation is restoring many of them and turning them into cider, and I think that's great. Interesting, this was an apple tree that was thought to be extinct from Colorado, but a group called the Montezuma Orchard Restoration Program, which I would highly encourage you to visit, is restoring all of the heritage fruit trees from Montezuma County. We were lucky to have one, and when this is more mature, we'd like to do some grafting off of it as well. But we really, most of our effort has been in focusing on irrigation as a priority, as a hedge against droughts, climate change, and a warmer climate. Most people are familiar with this picture. This is us when we're flood irrigating, when we flood irrigated first 2 years, a very romantic vision of being out in the fields in the morning at sunrise and at sunset. But what you're literally doing is you're moving dirt with a shovel and causing water to go different directions, and you're using 1800s technology for a very precious commodity and very wasteful. So we researched many, many different technologies and came up with an irrigation system called Fixed Set Big Guns. And this is about, there's 70 of these in the fields. They're fixed, they don't move. They're about 4.5 feet tall. This is the sprinkler head. This is, there's a diaphragm valve that's an open and closed valve that turns these on and off. This is an air release valve, pressure release valve, very high pressure, 120 PSI. And this is a control panel. We run these wirelessly off of a computer in our workshop. So we turn them on and off with programs that run all the time. Very little labor involved in running these. Just some pictures. Each of the guns are spaced 400 feet apart. So they are literally shooting out 400 feet, 100 GPM, gallons per minute, at about 110 to 120 PSI pressure, very high pressure. And a couple things I'll show you. You can see the water pattern. It's like a fine mist. And that's very important to not damage grasses and things we grow. Again, 400 feet from here to here, and you can see, so we overlap between each gun to make sure we get good coverage. Again, you can see the fine mist and the pattern from the gun all the way to the, from the beginning to the end. Frosty fall morning with a little bit of snow in the Platas. This movie is showing the guns in action. Again, I'm standing about 400 feet away. It's a little deceiving. And I'm about to get wet. And you don't want to be in harm's way of these big guns. Yep, I'm starting to get wet. Okay, some other things we're doing on the ranch. All of the out of field orchards and berries and medicinal herbs and produce, nut trees are all done with even more efficient systems with the latest generation of tapes and micro sprayers and technology that was perfected in arid countries like Israel. Um, some lessons we've learned, and I'll go through this very quickly. Generally, the big guns are more efficient than the published tables. It's more than 80% efficient. And we found that the flood irrigation, just by contrast, was less efficient than published tables. When you have a switch on a control panel that you can turn off and pause, you can save a lot of water. And we do that all the time during the irrigation season. If it rains, when we're moving livestock through the fields, but we're always pausing the big guns. We try to run them only at night. But when you have a flood irrigation ditch running, you turn it on in May and you leave it on till the end of the season, oftentimes in September and October, running full time. The other lesson learned is when you're not irrigating, you're spending more time with your customer, getting to know your market, and doing other on-farm things. This shows the comparison between flood irrigation in the orange, the use of water by month, and versus the big guns in blue. You can see May through August, and then the total for the year. This was for the year 2019. First year we used this, we saved 61.4% of our water. Imagine that saving in the state of Colorado, where 82% of the consumptive use of water is used by agriculture. Imagine the savings of water that can be used for other purposes, left in the rivers, left in the streams, if everyone became that efficient. Just a few more pictures. This is a picture of my daughter's medicinal herbs in January. She starts them in the greenhouse in January. And then 3 or 4 months later, this is what they look like. You'll recognize these as California poppies, which have some kind of medicinal property that I'm not sure. She probably has about 40 different varieties of perennial medicinal herbs. We dry them on these, we made these drying bins in the greenhouse to dry. Daughter makes salves and tinctures and oils. We sell a lot of them to doctors and physical therapists and sports medicine folks, naturopaths, and health food stores. I'm always concerned about the impact of the changing climate, drought on our wildlife. We have an abundance of wildlife on the ranch. But there's no better bellwether than birds. And you've heard the stories this year about mass fatality rates and strange acting birds and birds that have never shown up. And I can tell you from firsthand experience that that is all true. The bird life on this ranch is just off the charts. But this year, this fall, we've had flocks of these yellow-headed blackbirds. And they're still there, and we've never seen them before. And whether it's the drought or the heat or the fires in California and Colorado and throughout the West, and the smoke, they're migrating different. They're staying on the property different times. All of a sudden we had flocks of these pied grebes show up on our ponds, and they're still there. But most interestingly, we had flocks of warblers that we've never seen before. This is a Wilson warbler. And they stayed around for about a month and a half, and we've never seen them before. They left just about 2 weeks ago when that big storm happened. And I think that a lot of them are getting caught up north, and the colder weather and the lack of food is causing some of the mortality rate. Just some other fun things we're doing on the farm. These are pecan trees. I had planted about 15 of them last spring. I had a success rate of about 50%. The lesson I learned is I can't plant them down in low-lying areas where the cool water pools. I need to get them up higher on the ridges. This is interesting. This is an extinct American chestnut tree. Planted 10 of those last spring, 70% success rate. This one actually is growing very well. As you know, there were billions of American chestnuts killed by the chestnut blight during the 19th and 20th century in the Midwest and the East Coast. But they found some trees that were immune from the blight, and they crossed it with, and I'm not sure I have the proper terminology, with some Chinese chestnut trees. And then they recrossed them back many times over to the American immune chestnuts. So they're essentially extinct American chestnuts. We are experimenting with them. We don't think the blight is out here. If it's successful, we can graft off of them and try to perpetuate the American chestnut tree. We do an apiary. My son and my son-in-law did that this year for the first time. Here they are taking their first honeycomb and putting it in our centrifuge stainless steel container with a centrifuge that separates the honey from the comb. I prefer to eat it directly off of the comb, and I can tell you that the taste of this honey is unlike any honey you would buy in a store. You taste every single wildflower on the property. I'll get into the last slide. This fall picture, you can see it's still a bit green just 2 weeks ago. None of this would be green without the use of small reservoirs. And that will have to be a tool in droughts and a changing climate. The world of big reservoirs is over. You won't be able to permit or build them. They're too expensive. But small reservoirs above your usage can be beneficial, not only in providing irrigation water, but providing water back to streams late in the year when they're at their driest. And that's it. This is our success day of when we finally turned on our first big gun. It's my daughter and I. She's the genius behind all of this. And with that, be happy to answer any questions you have and have a conversation at some point in time. And again, thank you. I'm honored to be able to speak to the Botanical Society, and I look forward to joining your group and getting involved in what you do. And with that, I'm going to end our program. Again, thank you very much.